Well, welcome to Trainwell 2021. This week we're going to be looking at the first part of building our diorama. I need a programming track so that I can program my digital logos, not on the main layout. I have a piece of track left over that I've not used, so I'm going to mount this onto some board. So I have a hard piece of wood board at the bottom. I'm then going to put on some foam, a little narrow layer of foam, so I can put things into it like trees and stuff. And I'm going to make a little embankment so I can practice doing my embankment. So I shall cut this other thicker piece of foam. Then I've got my track underlay and then the track itself. So I'm going to glue all of this lot together for now, and then we can start putting the scenery on top of that just to make it look nice, so that then I can use the track to program those logos. I've glued the polystyrene to the piece of wood, and I've got some bricks on that now just to help that stay in place while I glue it. At the same time, I have cut out a little shape for my embankment, if you can see that. So I've got that there. And I'm now going to glue the track bed on top of that little embankment. I can use my pins to pin it in. So I've glued that. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to solder some power wires onto my track so that I can then feed the power in from the power supply. While this is drying, I can put a little bit of paint along the sides. I'm going to be putting some either plaster cloth or some tissue on the embankment, so I won't do that yet until that's glued onto the other piece, but I can just paint along by the railways for now, because that's going to be covered in ballast. Well, it's time to take shape. So you can see now I've glued the track bed and the banking onto the main piece of foam here, which is glued to the piece of wood, of course. So now I've just used some big paper clips. All I did was I just took a big paper clip, bent it open, and then just pushed the wire in. I had lots of paper clips, all these big paper clips. So I've used those just to hold it in place whilst it glues. So I've put some more around the back as well, just to hold it on the back. So now this is all gluing. So I'm using quick set glue for the polystyrene, so that only takes 4 or 5 minutes to glue. And then I can carry on putting some tissue and some glue over the top, so that then I can put some plaster on top of it tomorrow. That will probably dry overnight. I've soldered my wires to my track, so you see there the track will fit nicely on the piece of wood. I'm going to put some little stops at each end, maybe some little stones or something, just to build that up so the trains don't go off the end. And then I'm going to drill some holes, or just push some little holes for these wires, so I can push the wires down and they'll come out the side here. So now we've got some kitchen towel, or this is blue towel from the garage. So I've pinned that onto there. I'm then going to be putting some glue and water. So this is a 50-50 PVA water glue mix. And we're going to put that over the kitchen towel. I'm just going to spray it a little bit with some water, and then we'll mix all that in so that it all goes against the embankment. This is a cheaper way of doing it without using plaster cloth. You can shape it as well as you go along. And there you get the idea. Once that's dried off, then we'll put some plaster on it, normal plaster, just to build up the scenery a little bit. While this glue is drying overnight, I'm also going to glue the track down. Now normally we nail the track down, but obviously I'm just cutting into foam, so there's not a lot of grip on the foam, so we're just going to use glue. So I'll put the track on there, spread all this out, and then we will put a heavy weight on it, like the brick I've got down here, and then we will leave this all overnight to dry. We can use a straight edge just to check that it's nice and straight. Not that it really needs to be straight, it's not that critical, because this is just the test track. But that is straight. So now carefully put the piece of wood on the top, and then I will carefully again balance a brick on the top. So that will now keep that weighted down overnight while that all dries. At the front of the diorama, I'm going to make a little road. I've bought myself some acrylic asphalt paint. So this actually is like paint that makes like a road texture. So we're going to be using that. So I've just masked off with some masking tape to protect that, because I'm going to put plaster all over this embankment, ready for us to put the grass and the bushes on. I've mixed up my plaster and now I'm going to start applying it to the cloth. So covering that on the whole embankment. I've put the plaster on the embankment and you can see I've taken the masking tape off of the road, so that road is open. So now I am going to start putting some ballast on this track. I've glued the ballast along the back of the track. Can you see that all the way along, up the side of the underlay for the railway, or the foam for the railway. So the next thing to do now is to actually ballast on the track itself. So we've got our little ballast machine. Do you remember we used this before? So I can put the ballast in the hopper here, and then we just push it along the track and it lets all the ballast out. We give it a bash with a spoon or the back of a paintbrush to settle it all down, and then we can use the glue. So I've got a little dropper here, so I use the dropper to pick up the glue, and we drop the glue in between the tracks so that it sticks all the ballast in place. So we do that next. And now we use the glass dropper to just drop little bits of glue all the way along on the railway. Can you see? So now it all soaks into the stones, and that will then glue it in place. One thing I forgot to do was to spray it with water. So we use our fine spray with water and a little bit of washing up liquid so that we wet all of the stones, and then the glue goes in a bit easier. I forgot about that. Now we need to leave this to dry for a few hours so all the glue dries out, and then we can start painting the embankment and the road. This is dried enough now so that I can paint the embankment my burnt umber colour, which will act as the base for the grass. Well, that's the embankment painted burnt umber. And the next thing is to leave this all to dry overnight, because I sprayed it with water, so it's all still a little bit wet. And then tomorrow we can carry on with the road and putting on some grass. Next phase is to put on some grass on the embankment. So you see I've put on the white PVA glue, watered down, it's about 50-50. And then now I'm going to get my Pro Grass applicator, and I'm going to shake that over to put the grass down, or the first layer of grass. We're going to collect the excess, so I'm just going to tip off if there's any excess on there, so we can save that. So I've still got a bit of excess, I can put that back in the packet. Next thing we do is going to add some brown in. So we use the spray adhesive. And now we use the brown colour. This is longer brown, 2mm. Okay, so we're building up our layers of grass. That looks pretty cool. Then we'll put a little bit of dead grass on it as well. Along the back end as well, do a little bit of dead grass too. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad, does it? Another good trick we learnt from the internet. We want to make some long grass, some sort of really long pieces of grass. Now, what we can use is natural paint brushes. So these are bristle paint brushes. They're made of animal hair, not the black plastic nylon brushes that you may have at home. So these are real bristles. So you can buy a packet of these cheap bristle paint brushes for about £2 or £3, for about 4 or 5 paint brushes. So what we're going to do is we're going to dye all these little things green, so that then we can cut them up and then stick them in the side like they look like grass. So we need a little bit of green paint. which we'll have here. And we need some water, lots of water, not too much water. And then we're going to mix it all around. So that the paintbrush is dyed green colour. Now, can you see? That's probably actually much too much green. I'm going to water it down quite a lot. Here we go, that's better. So let that soak in there for 4 or 5 minutes. And then we'll shake it out. Once the green is soaked in, can you see the bristles are sort of going green. So we don't want the paint too thick, otherwise the bristles all stick together and they're no good. So once we've dyed it, we'll take it out, give it a bit of a dry, flick the brushes so that they don't stick together. And then we'll see how that turns out when it's dry. So you can pick old oak leaves from the trees, and then when we get home we can process them and can show you what we can do with them. Of course, just take the old oak leaves that are all dying, don't take fresh ones. Once we've picked our leaves, we then put them on a baking tray and we'll put them in the oven at 80 degrees centigrade for about an hour so they're nice and dry. So here's our leaves, nicely cooked. Don't touch the pan, it's hot. You can pick up a leaf. So yeah, you can see they're all nicely crispy. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to break off these stems. So we just leave the leaves and then you'll see what next we do. Once all our leaves are dried, then we ask permission from the person who owns the kitchen blender if you can use it. So, Chris, can I borrow your kitchen blender to do my leaves? Yes, you can. And then we can just then blend the leaves. So after all that effort, then you end up with some nice leaf ground cover. So you can use this to put under your trees, because that's what normally happens when you look at trees out in the wild. You'll see that underneath all the trees are all the dead leaves from last year. So that's what this is. So you see some nice leaf ground cover. It's quite green at the moment, so we can add a little bit of brown, a bit of glue, the spray glue, and then just gently put some brown on in different places to make it look like the leaves have fallen. And where we probably put on a tree or something at some point. So and then we can put a load more under where the tree is as well. Because embankments aren't normally that green, are they? Yeah, it's a bit better, isn't it? Look, a bit more colour. Well, we have this other stuff that's called clump foliage. So I think it's like little bits of foam or something that they dye different colours. Well, these are green, obviously. I've got a couple of different greens. So what we do with clump foliage, we get a bit of glue, put some glue on the layout, and then we just push the clump foliage into it to stick it. Yeah. And then we have a bush. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Let's do another one over here, maybe. A bit more glue. And push him in. And there's another bush. And we carry on doing that until we're happy with the bushes that we've got. Yeah, you get the idea. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next episode.